Radio.
Oh, that intro music. It's really good, right? Oof, nice. All right, so welcome back to another episode of Svelte Radio. Today we have another guest. Ooh, this time from, I think he's from Gitpod. They also sponsored Svelte Summit that we recently had, I think last week. And yeah, I'm Kevin. I'm your host. I run a site called Svelte School, and I'm involved in Svelte Society. And then I'm joined by my other co-hosts.
Hey everyone, I'm Sean. I work on developer experience at Temporal, and I guess I just shitpost on Twitter for Svelte.
Hi, I'm Antony. I'm a CTO of Bionk, and I am also a Svelte maintainer. I'm going to hand over to Mike to introduce himself.
Hey everyone, my name is Mike. I work at Gitpod at the moment as a developer and customer success engineer. That's really just a fancy word for saying that I help people who use Gitpod on a technical side. And I've been using Svelte for quite a while, so we're going to be talking about that today.
Welcome. So, what's your background? Where did you start in web development?
I started web development back in just around 2000 when everything started to crash. I figured it's a good time to start. Basically, I started out building Java-based web applications and did that for a couple of years. And then Node.js came out, and I realized you can now use JavaScript on the front end and the back end. So that, kind of blew my mind at that time. So I dropped Java and added script to it. And I've been working with JavaScript ever since then. So it's been a bit over 20 years now. And then Svelte came out about 2 years ago, I learned about Svelte 2 years ago, and that completely changed everything again. So quite exciting.
So you started. So you've done it all. Then you've done.
Yeah, I had the wow effect when jQuery came out, and then React, and then Svelte, and it just doesn't stop.
Yeah. Cool.
Which is, it's because I come from the Java world as well, really. And it's interesting, the speed that JS moves versus the speed that Java moves. I mean, people are still using the same stuff that I used when I last used Java, which was probably like 10 years ago now or something. The stuff has moved on, but it's so niche. There's not a lot that's actually changed.
Agreed, yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way when I talk to colleagues who do the same still. And yeah, there's very few things that change.
It's the same.
Yeah. All right.
Which some people call stability, but
who needs that? Stability anyway?
Yeah, right.
Who needs that? Okay, so you work at Gitpod, and you worked with is that like a developer relations role?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, that's probably a good way to describe it. The goal is really on two things. One, kind of advocate for what we do in terms of the philosophical change from moving from your local development environment to a cloud-based ephemeral environment that you use for one task, then you throw it away, and then you get another one for the next task. So that's kind of the role there. Yeah.
I was going to say maybe we should talk about what Gitpod actually is.
That's a good idea.
I can give you an overview. Basically, so you're all familiar with getting a new laptop, and then either you may have some scripts that you run every time you get a new laptop, or you have to go through all the setup steps and everything. So the same is true when you set up a new project, or when you want to quickly contribute to an open source project. You go through the README, you read all the steps and all that, right? How to set up the environment, the right libraries. Gitpod allows you to create a configuration file and fully automate that. And what happens is you run all these steps in what is called a pre-build phase. So every time you do a git push to your repository, the Gitpod app basically pulls down the latest code and pre-builds your next development environment with that latest code. So by the time you want to start working on your project, you can just click a button on the README that opens a new tab with VS Code, a terminal, and all the stuff running that you usually have locally. But it does that for each project. So if you switch from one project to another, you don't have an issue with the Node version or the Java version. It's just whatever you need for that specific project. It's already there for you.
Does this all run in the browser, or how does this work?
So at the moment, this is all browser based. VS Code starts up. You have a container behind it that runs a terminal. You have Docker running in there and all these things. We are working at the moment on an app that is called the Local Companion app. so that you can actually run things on your laptop. That helps with the transition from your local environment to the cloud. Gives you a chance to connect to local databases and things like that.
Sounds good. Sounds very good.
I think most people who hear about this, I mean, I think it's pretty cool. I definitely have had this pain point. How does it differ from GitHub Codespaces?
Codespaces is actually very similar. The only thing that they currently don't have is the fact that we can run these pre-builds. So with Codespaces, you click the button on GitHub and then you wait for the VM to start up. And, you then run your build script just the same way you would do on your local machine, npm install and npm build, whatever you have to run. With Gitpod, we do all that kind of like a CI/CD pipeline before you even start your environment. So by the time you click the button to start the environment, it gets to a point where in our case, for example, the website that we're building, when I click the button to start an environment, the dev server is already running and my preview is right there for the web application. So SvelteKit starts up in the background and I'm basically always ready to code. That's kind of the way to look at it. But the concept is similar, and it's actually exciting to have Codespaces come out to help educate the market, because it's just such a new concept for many people that any help we can get is obviously welcome.
Yeah. I recently found this feature in VS Code called remote containers, I think.
Yep.
That blew my mind, and I guess this is one step further in a sense.
Exactly, yeah, and that's why we're building that local companion app, so we can do that, one step transition at a time, rather than like, hey, let's give up all your local stuff and move everything to the cloud and do it ephemeral. That's too much for many people, So it took me a while as well, and having that step by step is just a lot easier going forward.
So does this mean I can have all this sort of stuff set up on my desktop upstairs, and then just move downstairs with my Chromebook, say, and then start using Gitpod and
That's
carry
right.
on?
That's right, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Should try.
It's actually a real world use case for me.
Always nice when you find those.
Yeah. Well, it's because, obviously, like with the pandemic and stuff being locked in, I think a lot of people went, well, why am I using a laptop still? I'm paying a lot for no power here. So people have moved to desktops, and that does remove your portability. So I think Gitpod sounds like it brings it back.
I think it's the fact also that all you need is an internet connection that has a low latency. It doesn't even have to be big bandwidth. It just has to have low latency. I have coworkers that live in a van and travel around Australia, and all they have is 3-4 different 4G antennas that hook up to whatever signal they can get, and he's just fine doing the work wherever he is. Yeah,
that's great.
The van life.
That's
the first time I've actually heard someone actually do that, like for real. I always see these like videos on YouTube with people living in them, and it looks awesome. But then, yeah,
it's also fun for me to have my one-on-ones with him when he's every time we talk he's somewhere else. Oh, where are you today? Send me your coordinates.
What does he do for internet? Like,
yeah, so he has
I think satellite dish.
He has 4 different providers that hook up to cell phone signal. But then he also ordered Starlink, so once he gets that, then he'll be more free.
Wow!
Of course, Starlink.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to do that.
Yeah, it does sound a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Just traveling in general sounds like a lot of fun at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, traveling further than your own neighborhood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just take a train one day.
Yeah. Could do that. At least here in Europe, it's pretty easy. So last week we did Svelte Summit, and that was great. And we had a lot of different fun talks that were done by many different people, naturally. So Gitpod, as I mentioned in the start of the show, was a sponsor, and you reached out and you told me about like Gitpod's migration from Sapper to SvelteKit. Maybe we could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I think we may have to change the title of the podcast. I'll tell you the full story. Sapper to SvelteKit is only the second part of the story. So basically, we had previously had a Gatsby React site that was built by the engineering team, and when I joined, I was asked to help rebrand the website. So we did a full company rebrand and made a bunch of announcements. And part of that was rebranding from blue to orange, or kumquat more accurately, according to the design team. And what happened there was I had a code base that I've never seen before, and I was a little bit rusty on React, given I've done Svelte for 2.5 years. And then I was given a team that, never met each other before. It was 2 freelancers and one of our existing team members. So I was facing that situation of like, what am I going to do? Am I going to try to understand the existing code base? And with a 3-week deadline, I really didn't have much leeway there to do much. So I'm like, well, I'm familiar with Svelte, and I'm very confident that I can teach the team Svelte in less than a day, at least the stuff they need to know to build, a marketing website. So a bit of back and forth and a few, conversations with the leadership team, and eventually we went for it, and we were like, okay, what now? Because SvelteKit literally just passed the stage of like, hey, this is the public beta, and the first thing you get is like, there will be bugs and, expect things to break. So it was not exactly easy for me to make the point for that. So I'm like, okay, I know Sapper though, and I'm familiar with Sapper. I know we can deliver what I need to deliver with Sapper. So, there we go. We spin up a Sapper template and basically get everybody going. And there was a promise from the core team of Svelte that the migration from Sapper to SvelteKit is going to be smooth and seamless. So I took all my faith into the core team, and I'm like, you better mean what you say. And we went all in with Sapper, and about a week before the deadline we had to launch, I had dinner, sat down, put the headset on, and went through the migration guide on the SvelteKit website, literally one step at a time. And by the end of the evening, we were migrated to SvelteKit. And that all ended up in a single PR. So if anybody's interested, we can link to that later. So that was pretty cool. And we removed about a third of the lines of code that were there before. So that was pretty exciting.
You might be the first production user of SvelteKit, apart from the New York Times.
Possibly, I don't know. Yeah, I haven't seen much online, but it was quite exciting to just have that faith, I guess, in the first place, but then see it play out exactly as it was kind of promised in the public channels and things like that. So great work to the team building SvelteKit and the migration guide and everything. That worked just as advertised.
You mentioned you removed a lot of like code. What in like particular did you not have to include?
Oh, that's a good point. I did not actually look at it. I just saw in the GitHub pull request that there is more red than green. So that's how I judge that this is like, a good thing.
Yeah. Well, fair enough.
Maybe you just had a really big server.js or something.
Yeah, that could be
potentially. There were definitely a lot of maybe it was a server.js. I'm just trying to pull it up here, see what it shows. Yeah, I think it was also dependencies actually that were reduced quite a bit in SvelteKit itself. There are very few dependencies that come with SvelteKit from what I've seen, compared to what I had in Sapper that we pulled in.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of build infrastructure's gone as well, because it's obviously just the adapters do that stuff for you now, and really just all they do is move files around it, in honesty.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. We deployed in Netlify, so we used that adapter. And
so we can probably assume that the migration worked since you
did.
managed to get it merged with a PR there. So what didn't work? Like, well, what was hard about it, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think because of the beta label, I think that the SvelteKit had at that time, it still does at the moment, but there were a few bugs that showed up. Like one that I remember quite vividly is like we had all that CSS header, footer, everything in place. And then we wanted to style the error page, and all the CSS was gone. So that was it was an actual bug. I looked it up in GitHub. It showed up right away, and it was fixed within a few days. And the thing is, we were very close to launch, so we made the decision to work around it. But it's something that showed up, but it was fixed within a day. And that kind of same story is something that I saw for any other thing that happened, where something wasn't quite right. But because the demand was so big and so many people were working on it and opening issues, they really got fixed almost as instantly as they were opened. And Same for Netlify adapter. The like redirects weren't taken into consideration. Again, looking at the source code, it was as easy as just removing a file eventually and things like that. So it's very simple to get around the issues that showed up, but there were a couple things that were rough. And now that's a whole different story. Like we are 2 weeks past when we launched, or 3 weeks by now, and I think starting with SvelteKit is perfectly fine now. There's no need to have the safety net of Sapper in the background at this point.
Do you think you fixed a lot of those issues yourself, or do you think that most of them were just fixed kind of by other people, or were they fixed by the core team? Like, do you know what the spread was roughly? Or
yeah, I think there's maybe 2 or 3 where we did a workaround. So one was that Netlify redirect issue where there's a netlify.toml file where you can define your redirects, but then the adapter generated a file like underscore redirects, which overwrites everything in the Netlify toml. And with that, basically what we did is we just took whatever the adapter wrote into that file, we added it to the Netlify toml, and then had a little post deploy script that removed that underscore redirect. Right, I don't know if that makes sense. Convoluted. But so basically that was an easy workaround that fixed the issue. Other than that, a lot of it was actually fixed by the core team or contributors to SvelteKit itself. And, you do another upgrade and make sure it works. I think it's still very much work in progress and very active development. So even going from one version to the next, I had to make sure we do a full test of the website, make sure the markdown parsing still works and all these things. But nothing really major that would scare me to do it again. Yeah.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. Like one day it's working just fine, perfectly, and then there's some new version out, and it just decides to, nope, not today.
Not today.
Come back in a couple of hours when someone's fixed it. It's kind of funny.
I mean, I think we have enough stuff running on Kit now that we tend to spot serious problems now, and also there's a sort of work underway to deploy basically like a fully fledged sample app to all the different platforms we kind of support by ourselves. So that we'll hopefully be able to see if there's any glaring differences between adapters. So yeah, I guess as it evolves and as we end up hosting more and more of Svelte's own infrastructure and own estate on there, then we tend to see things. But obviously production use cases like Mike's is like GitPod's really is a huge boon to showing us when things break. Test and prod alive and well as usual.
You mentioned the adapters and things. So one issue we had was with Netlify. Just suddenly we had 500 errors on the documentation pages, and it was very sporadic. You couldn't reproduce it with a browser or anything. And I pulled up some historical logs to see when it happened. There's no pattern or anything. And what happened there was we believe it was something in the function that was just breaking, and it was like certain time periods when it didn't work. Really no idea what went on. And we just ended up doing the pre-render equals true on literally everything. And now we just have static pages, which makes total sense for a marketing page. On documentation, there's no need to have any dynamic stuff. But yeah, I would have loved to have a central config saying that everything is static without using the static adapter, because I still have some functions that I need to do SSR and things like that. But yeah, so it was a little shell script that goes through a bunch of Svelte files and injects a header with a pre-render equals to fix that issue as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure what this Netlify error is, but if you could, I guess, send it into the support team, they could probably spin up a separate site and then just ping it occasionally to figure out what the issue is. Yeah. If it's like a regular time of day or something, that's very bizarre. Unless you have like a third-party API dependency, maybe that's the issue.
Yeah, not too sure. We had people reporting I can't access docs. I would check, it works perfectly fine, and then I would check again 20 minutes later and it was broken, and it was just all this thing.
Yeah. I would rely on pingdom, and then maybe also look at the functions logs to see if there's any errors reported. I'm not sure what it is.
It's something to look at. Now we're all on static pages, but it's definitely something that if we really need to go back to it, then we need to dive deeper. I agree.
That makes sense. So I want to bring it back to your team. So they hadn't really touched Svelte at all What kind of problems did you run into there, like teaching people Svelte?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we had one person who maintained the previous website, and then we had two people that were freelancers and just like friends of mine that would help out and just make sure we hit the deadline. So the way we went about that was that because I knew Svelte, I would create the Svelte files, but then there's really nothing to a Svelte file if you don't do any dynamic, behavior. So people pick that up and they're like, well, yeah, you don't have to do that for me. I can create my own Svelte file. I'm like, fantastic, go for it. If you want styles, then, you add a style tag at the top, and there's really not much to learn other than that. And when I started doing things like the pre-render equals true, people were curious, and I would just send them to the docs and they would read up on it. I think where it got a bit interesting was when we started looking into like the blog index page. So each blog post at the moment is a markdown file. So we would have to load all these files and then create a list of most recent blogs. So that's where I started looking to hooks and, import.glob and things like that from Vite. Or is it called Vite? Anyway. So looking into that.
Nobody knows.
And then it's just a matter of explaining what it does and when these functions run. But yeah, very, very low overhead to really get started. And I think we would have had a harder time trying to understand the existing code base written by people that were not part of the team than just telling people like, instead of .html, it's .svelte, and you do whatever you do. If you want a loop, this is how you do a loop. If you do if else, this is how you do if else. Done. Yeah, it's very straightforward. Almost too
pretty
easy.
Smooth.
Yeah.
Svelte is like it's kind of like a cheat code in like a game. That's how it feels.
It truly is. Yeah.
I think Mike, you also had a blog post where you talked about your transition from React to Svelte, right? Like you laid out quite a few reasons there.
Yeah, that was way back when I had a moment. I think a year and a half ago. I think what I did at that time was I took the React examples on their homepage and I converted them to Svelte. And then I got a lot of pushback because they're like, well, you could write the React more efficiently. And I was like, okay, I'm just trying to make a point. But I think
that will always
the
happen.
reply guys showed up.
But to be serious, right? I mean, on a serious note, I think the fact that you don't have to, like, you can just write HTML in a Svelte file and you're good to go. I think this is just such a easy onboarding journey that you get with Svelte, that it's very low effort for anybody to get started.
Yeah.
I remember when I started, it was Svelte 2 when I first heard of it. And, then Svelte 3 came out, everything got easier. And now with SvelteKit, I feel that the challenges or the difficulties with Sapper we had is gone as well. Like there's a lot of the adapters take care of a lot of stuff, and the hooks get rid of all the, little file system stuff that you used to do to load markdown files and parse them and get a list of blog posts. Anyway, all that is really, really clean now.
Yeah, it's like every time someone tries Svelte, they usually stick around. At least from my experience, it's nice.
They do, and then they start looking for a job in Svelte because it's they're like, oh, I don't want to use whatever else at work.
and there are like jobs popping up a lot more often now than like a year ago. At least that's how I perceive it. Maybe it's.
No, I think you're right. I mean, look at we monitor jobs channel quite a lot, and there's a lot of activity in there now where there didn't used to be. Things are appearing on my Twitter feed now, which is interesting because I didn't see that before, and it's I definitely see an uptick. There's also about 3,000 members in the Discord, and I remember going, wow, we've got 1,000 in here, and I didn't really look after that because it's like, well, it's huge now, and then next minute this sort of peak is 3,300 something. I'm like, well, okay, there's got to be jobs out there, right? Because all these people.
Yeah,
we've got 9,000 on Twitter.
Wow.
And yes, it's growing a few hundred every month.
That's crazy, the YouTube channel, it's also something like that, like 10,000 subscribers or something. Or is it? I need to look this up.
That might be your personal one.
Yeah.
8,000. I just pulled it up.
8,200.
Yeah, it's youtube.com/Svelte Society if anyone wants to check it out. We recently spent some time cleaning up the landing page, so you can actually see all the past talks.
Yeah, nice.
Actually, when we talked about jobs, it reminded me of something kind of related, but the ecosystem. Like if you're in any other language, you can go npm install whatever you need. I think with Svelte, so I got a bit of pushback at the beginning that saying that, well, Svelte doesn't have all these plugins and packages that we can just pull in and install. But then my view on that was always that, well, maybe you don't need a plugin or an npm package. Maybe you can just write it yourself because it's so easy. And then you have what you need, and you don't have all the other boilerplate around it that you don't need.
Yeah.
So it turns out that we actually got by very easily by just building a few things ourselves. Like in the Gatsby site, for example, we had an RSS feed generator where we would give it a directory of markdown files. It would do its thing. Writing that in Svelte was, I don't know, like 20 lines of code max, maybe less. And you just create that RSS string by yourself and get the stuff from a hook, and you're good to go. So I think that there's a couple things that really initially was a bit of a pushback, and then we were like, well, let's write it ourselves, and a couple hours later it's deployed to production and work.
Yeah, so I think one of the examples in the original Svelte template was, or the Sapper template was an RSS feed, yeah. And it's just like, well, it's so simple to do, then why am I using a plugin, all this bump I don't need. I think the other thing is, like you said, exactly about the ecosystem. People judge the ecosystem of a framework or a library based upon doing a search for, let's say, I don't know, their favorite calendar with Svelte attached to it, and it's not there, and they go, well, there's no ecosystem, there's no components. But I mean, I would never ever have suggested that I could ever build a calendar, but I've completely rewritten the Svelte calendar project from scratch now, and it's just because it's Svelte, I can do it. It's straightforward, it's easy, it makes sense, it's logical, and it was almost like a black box before. I couldn't see how anyone could actually do it. I thought the complexity was huge. So I absolutely agree that it's a shame that kind of people are judged upon that ecosystem when really it's not important, because our ecosystem in Svelte is vanilla JS, right? We in my belief, and I've tried this across multiple languages to make sure, it's easier to integrate Svelte with the vanilla JavaScript project than it is to integrate any other framework, React, Vue, whatever, with a vanilla JavaScript project, because they all need something special to make it compatible, and you just don't in Svelte. So you've got all the Svelte components, but you've also got all of the vanilla JS components that are just there and will just work. And the only reason for wrappers is maybe to make them a bit more Svelte, so you can have like a fancy API or some reactivity or whatever, but you can just build it on your project if you really need it. So yeah, totally agree with what you said there.
I've been reflecting on this as well. Like React is very insistent on the functional model of things. That's why there's a sort of, I think the popular term is impedance mismatch, when you have to write the React dash whatever version just to use that library. Whereas Svelte, you can just kind of plug it in directly. I think it also is easier when it's a marketing site versus some apps where, like, let's say you need a bigger ecosystem, like a table, or like some kind of accessibility or mobile friendly interface. So yeah, I mean, definitely have a more critical thought about how much of the ecosystem you really need, because it turns out you actually don't need a lot of it. I think it helps you write smaller sites anyway, because you don't just mindlessly import the first thing that shows up on Google. You actually have some critical thought about like what you really need. And then the last point I would bring up is that actually inside of the SvelteKit repo, there's an examples folder with a Hacker News clone, and there's actually an RSS a sample code there. You can just copy and paste. So I'm not sure if that's what you did, Mike, but if other people, you don't have to write it yourself, you can just copy and paste.
Darn, I should have talked to you earlier then. But I'm going to compare it now, see how theirs looks versus mine.
I mean, there's actually a few of these around because all the Svelte infrastructure is written in Svelte, obviously. So the example Sapper project has an RSS feed in it. The Svelte site has an example of pulling in a bunch of markdown files and building docs from them. So there's quite a few useful common like scenarios. The Sapper project also had a blog in it originally, so you can check the way that the blog is done there. But yeah, there's lots of these kind of real world use cases that live within the example project as a base to start the stuff from.
Yeah, you mentioned Markdown. One thing we did there, we used MD Swex, if I pronounced that right.
Oh yeah.
And I wasn't quite sure if it's gonna how it's going to work. We have about 120-ish markdown pages across the blog and the documentation. So I wasn't quite sure if that's going to, slow down my build time or startup time or anything like that. But it was almost not noticeable. It's very, very quick to get this thing up and running and integrated. So yeah, pretty exciting.
Yeah, MD-Svex is nice.
Yeah, I also use it.
And the other thing there was that because it allows you to use it's called Rehype and the other plugin types, there were a lot of these things used in the Gatsby config file on the previous site. So I would literally be able to go into the Gatsby config file, copy the plugin name, remove Gatsby dash, find the actual, Rehype plugin, and then just hook that into MD-Svex. And off we would go, like including YouTube videos or things like that in your Markdown. Very, very little effort there to make this work. So pretty exciting. I was just looking through my notes. Another thing that I kind of wrote down was the reason why and other reasons why we switched to SvelteKit. And I think I'm looking at 3 lines, and I think to summarize the whole thing, it's just less cognitive overhead. I think like in your head when you open a Svelte project, I feel like there's very little you need to, keep in your mind. You just look at the file, you see what's going on. It's all in one file, and you don't have to worry about any other like magic or things like that are happening anywhere else. That really helps you again.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I also I actually probably want to extend that thought a bit by saying that this is one of the reasons that I've been, historically very averse to the multiple components in a single file support that other frameworks have. The reason being just because it's the cognitive overhead. It's the fact is that if I look in a file, I know that everything inside there is to do with that file. And I know there's like lots of different opinions on this, but it's definitely my opinion that file has this stuff in it, and that's where to find it, and that's that. It's just easier.
I can think of like one scenario where you kind of want some inline component, and that's where you have like an each thing with like an if. You have an if statement, and then you have an each inside of that, and you kind of want to reuse the same thing. I don't know if you guys have run into that.
I do, but I just create a component for it,
Yeah.
right? The inner thing.
Yeah,
is
I
its own
mean,
component.
yeah, but sometimes it's like 3 lines of code or whatever.
Sure. I think the thing is, for me, it's I do believe there are genuine use cases for it, but my personal opinion is that it's just easier as a rule. When you encounter a new Svelte project, say you join a company and they're working in Svelte, that you just know that there's only one thing inside that file. And I think one of the things that historically put me off React or learning further React was because every time I encountered a React project, all I saw was a I think it's MDX, isn't it? Where you've just got basic, not MDX, it's JSX, sorry. There's just got all these ternaries in it that build the DOM, and it's just like, why? I can't read this. I can't pull everything out. I can't understand it. And it happened again and again and again. I'm like, I get like this is convenient, but we shouldn't do this, and this seems to be encouraged. And it drove me nuts. So that was one of the reasons that Svelte looked so appealing when I discovered it, which is I think version 1 as well.
Yeah, React is a bit of a word soup, which is also
can be,
kind of how I feel about TypeScript.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally down to use, right? You don't have to do that. People don't have to do that. But it's literally, the people who I say this to, who are quite hardcore Reactors, will say that it's fine. Like, it's readable, it's cool. Like, okay, well, if you're going to encourage it, then that's definitely not a pro in my mind.
Yeah, especially hard for new people coming in to, like, familiarize themselves.
Because you're holding every ternary in your head.
Right.
Which is just impossible for a while.
Unless you're one of those 100x developers.
Oh, sure.
Ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I recently started rewriting the Svelte Society website in SvelteKit, and I've decided to do it in TypeScript as well. Because I wanna actually like learn TypeScript well. We're gonna see how that goes. Another one of my projects that never gonna come to fruition. We'll see.
I think what you'll find is there's a lot of support out there for it. So if you get stuck, there'll be people who can help you.
Yeah, I did.
I would just want to say, like, we use TypeScript as well, and we have the type files in a separate folder, so we can pull them in where we need it, and it does make, in my opinion, it does make the developer experience just that much smoother. So instead of like passing in a string once as a prop, and then next time it's a number, and then you have like some kind of stuff going on in the component, Now it's just the compiler or actually the editor even yells at you when you start throwing the wrong thing at it. So definitely helps.
Yeah. I mean, I see the pros of it. It's just that like every time I've tried to get into it, it's just a lot of stuff on the screen that's unfamiliar, if that makes sense. But I'm finding it to be a lot of fun though. So yeah. So what's next for Gitpod in terms of Svelte? Are you guys doing any other projects using Svelte? Or?
This is my opportunity to talk to my team if they listen to the podcast. So listen carefully. So I have this. I have not really communicated that yet, but why not do it here, right? I think I want to make sure that the experience for the engineering team to work on the website is just so mind-blowing that eventually we're going to migrate the actual application to Svelte as well. And I think the whole concept of Gitpod is to be always ready to code, right? And one thing is you need to be quick. You just can't wait for stuff to download and see, like, I mean, it happens naturally because we're pulling down Docker containers and stuff, but at least let's make sure that the web application that supports all that is really snappy and just, basically blows your mind, because our core customers are all developers, right? And yeah, I want to make sure that people say, like, well, do you want to see a good, really fast Svelte application? Go check out gitpod.io. And regardless of whether it's the marketing page or the actual application, I want this to be the default. So what's next? I will have to talk to my team now because it's now public information. So I think the plan here is to see what it takes to maybe even just do one part of the app, in Svelte, and then the rest, we keep what it is right now and see how that goes. But there's definitely a goal that I have for later this year to see what it takes to migrate.
Exciting.
That should be really cool.
Yeah, I'd like to see more application type projects in Svelte. That'd be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's nothing stopping you from building apps as well that are interactive and do things, and rather than just static pages. So
yeah, I think yeah. All right, so did you? I know you watched the Svelte Summit last Sunday, because I ran into you on the meatball session there.
First connection, you and me. That was awesome.
yeah, and we breezed through it real quickly because we knew we were going to do the podcast. So, So, which did you find any of the talks particularly fun, or? Yeah,
I think in terms of like the long-term impact to Svelte and the community, I really enjoyed. I think it was the very first one about the school. Is it in Finland that is using Svelte?
Norway.
Yeah. Norway. Yeah.
I think so. The reason I find this really exciting is because when I mentor others and help them get into web development, I use Svelte, for obvious reasons, and it's just so simple. Like, you start with HTML and then you layer on styling and then you layer on JavaScript, and that's that journey. So I think for many people to get into programming, like my wife tried it a couple of years ago, and there's the frustration came out of the JavaScript stuff. Like, I don't want to learn JavaScript to just show something on a website. So now you don't have to learn JavaScript. You can actually, you could do an HTML page in the past as well. But now if you want to use something that you can then build on top, you can use Svelte, and it's very, very easy onboarding. So I really enjoyed that talk and the fact that there are now schools that kind of use that in their curriculum. It was very exciting for me.
That's definitely interesting for me too.
Yeah, I think that was my favorite as well. Maybe I shouldn't have favorites.
You like them all equally.
Yeah. What about you, Antony? Which one did you?
Of all the talks, it's hard to know, isn't it? What's my favorite? Which one stuck out to me? I don't know. I think,
Node
to be honest,
one was fun.
It's sorry.
The Svelte Node GUI, that was fun.
Absolutely, especially after doing the podcast as well. I think it's a tough one because some of the talks are very much like, for example, Ron's, as usual, like it sticks in your mind, and it's just, whether or not you're interested in the subject matter, the way he presented it was just fantastic. So it's a tough one to know, but probably the no-go is useful because I have this notion of building a lot of sort of, I would say, desktop style apps. So it's kind of the perfect thing because everyone complains about Electron. Oh, it's too fast, too big, too slow, etc., etc. So it's definitely probably the most useful one. Shall I be fair and say it's the most useful one to me? Because I like Ron's because you just entertain constantly. It just flows. But in terms of getting something from it, I think probably no-go actually probably is a good one for that.
Yeah. So for reference, Ron's talk was the swoosh, shabam, Wincy in motion one. If you haven't seen it, you should go watch it.
And I'm also terrible at animation, so it's actually it's quite useful to know how it's not just magic and it's not Flash or whatever.
Yeah. What about you, Sean? Did you?
I guess I'll highlight the data viz one from Amelia and Russell, and I just noticed that we typoed both of their names on the Svelte Summit site.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh
We
no.
got both names wrong.
Oh no.
Anyway, they had really good. There's a very strong data viz community with Svelte. They really jive with how simple it is and how well it connects with D3. And obviously Amelia and Russell have a lot of experience working with Svelte and D3 with their pudding visualizations. And I think I just really enjoyed having the ability to feature their work because I know it's going to inspire a lot of other people to try Svelte out. And we actually talked about this, that it'd be cool to just feature data viz in a future event. Maybe not a Svelte Summit, maybe just like a data viz day or something like that.
Yeah.
More to Stefano and a bunch of other pretty influential people, I think, in the data viz community are just like, they're pretty interested. And it'd be great to just feature it and explore it more.
Yeah, it could be a lot of fun. What kind of stuff did you guys miss there? Like Mike, for example, were there any topics that you would have wanted to see on Svelte Summit?
Oh, good question. The way I usually approach the summits is that I come with an open mind and I see what's being thrown at me, and it's always entertaining. I think maybe I know there's some hesitations for companies to make the jump and move over to Svelte. So I wonder if it would make sense to maybe have a bunch of people doing lightning talks, similar to what we're doing right now on the podcast, but in a much shorter fashion, to show like, hey, look, we did the migration, that's what happened. Maybe just to kind of highlight that it's actually not scary, or it's not a bad thing to do or something, just get people more encouraged to start using Svelte in production environments. Not sure how we would do that on a Svelte Summit day, but just some way to highlight what's in production at the moment would be pretty good.
Yeah. I think we could probably do it live in some sense. Just bring people up that want to talk about their experience. That could be fun.
Yeah, there's a concept called the unconference where you just have a block of time and then you show up with like things you want to talk about. People vote, and then whoever gets the highest vote just goes up and talks about it. So it's a bit less prepared, but you're guaranteed satisfaction because people asked for the topic instead of
that sounds fun.
That's like a review committee or something like that. But I also mentioned that we do run a YouTube, and it's a community YouTube that's just featured that's just open to contributions. We have various meetups, like I think Svelte Indonesia streams their meetups, and I think one of the Brazil meetups also. But if you want to talk, if you're going to do a lightning talk, get in touch with me, or just DM the Svelte Society account. We'll check that and send in your talk and talk about your company and your migration. We love to collect your stories. And the problem with Svelte Summit was that we wanted it to hopefully end within 5 hours. I think we went up to 6-ish. So we have limited time, but on YouTube we have unlimited space. So I really want to encourage more people to just share stuff. And if we can make Svelte Society like a central, repository where people can discover this, then even better.
Yeah, that could be fun. All right. So any last few things you want to talk about with regards to Svelte or Gitpod or in general?
Well, try it out. See if you like it. Take your repo URL, gitpod.io hash in front of it, hit enter, and
should SvelteKit be using Gitpod to develop?
Yes.
Is that something that we should explore?
Sorry, am I allowed to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, hey, like we probably need to demonstrate it, but it'd be nice to I guess feedback that love into SvelteKit's development workflow itself. Obviously, I have no say in the matter, but
there's no reason, like, it's on a per contributor basis, isn't it? So
yeah,
it doesn't have to be a unilateral thing, right?
What I can do is I can open a PR and you guys can test it out. It's really not that hard. It basically runs a bunch of commands that you would run locally. So let me open that up and then we'll see what we do with it. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I just think it'd be cool to eventually, I know the Gitpod's app isn't in Svelte yet, but eventually use the Svelte app to contribute to Svelte.
Yeah, that could be fun. That could be a lot of fun. All right, so I guess that's it for this time. Thank you, Mike, for coming on. Where can people find you?
People can find me anywhere online with Mike Nikles as my handle. So the easiest is probably twitter.com/Mike Nikles.
All right,
see what's up there. I'll tweet whenever something crosses my mind.
Yeah.
Are you keen on hosting Svelte Canada meetups soon?
Yeah, so I have the handle on Twitter.
Yes.
And I have a half-baked
so you
logo.
officially run Svelte Canada right now.
Yeah, I do officially run it with 2 followers or something like that. So now that I'm starting to settle in and actually live where I want to live, I have time for things like that again. So yeah, my half-baked logo is going to eventually be a fully baked logo. And then we'll be up and running in the next little while.
What was the logo?
So I got really inspired by the Svelte French Society with the baguette. So I'm like, maybe a hockey stick or something like that. So we'll figure that part out. But once that's all settled, then we'll start doing activities.
Yeah. Which city are you in?
I'm in Vancouver at the moment.
Okay. Yeah. So if people are interested in Vancouver, they should hit you up.
Definitely should. Yes.
All right. Awesome. I guess I almost forgot the picks. The picks. I don't even have a pick. Do you guys have picks?
So I do have a pick. It's a bit of an abstract one. It's a bit of a weird one. It is one I thought of in a few minutes before this started because I was thinking I've got a pick because nothing's interesting to me anymore. I'm too busy to have interests. But what I found was, as part of what we're doing regarding being a booking platform, booking system, people ask for integrations with equipment, and one thing I thought might be quite challenging is a physical. Again, it's radio, so I'm only showing it to participants here, but basically it's a handheld QR scanner. And I thought it'd be really awkward to integrate the web with it and APIs and whatever else. And what I discovered was that when you plug the QR scanner in, it just identifies as a keyboard. So actually you can just scan anything in the QR code, and as long as you've got a text field focused or a text editor or anything at all that can take input, it will just write into that field and press enter for you. So the integration with these is really simple because all you're doing is saying if when characters are type into a hidden text field or whatever, and if it's the enter key, then submit it. That's all there is to it. And I just found that fascinating that this little device is just like another keyboard, and I could just go boop boop and type words. I could have QRs on the wall for my favorites and go, there we go, go to that address, go to that address. I could have so much fun with this. Now I know how it works. So my pick is handheld QR scanners. Because they're cool. Why don't we use more of these things more, right?
Yeah, I mean, just print out a bunch of QR codes.
Everything can be QR codes.
Wasn't that was the dream at some point a couple of years ago, right?
It probably was.
Everybody thought everything was going to use a QR code. You could see
you could automate scripts on your machine, right? You could automate a set of keystrokes that do something on your machine, I don't know, load some program and open some file. You could just make a QR code for it and then have a shortcut, a physical shortcut. So it is the dream, and it can be the dream. It can live on, and they're only like 10 quid on Amazon or wherever else, some of the better
cheap.
site.
So do you have any pick, Sean or Mike?
Yeah, I've been been frantically looking for one.
Yeah, I am too.
I'll just pick. I guess I'll just pick a person. I feel like this person, Josh Nussbaum, on Twitter. So on Twitter, his handle's Josh Nuss. He's just been putting out a lot of really good Svelte stuff. He had a Svelte and Supabase integration. So, with SvelteKit being more of a full stack framework, you kind of need a database to go along with it. And you can get one off of Cloudflare or Begin, but I think Supabase is also a really good option. And yeah, he's been working on a bunch of stuff. I think he just did an animation or Svelte Motion or Svelte Animation Store. And he's just working on a lot of different things. So we should try to feature community members.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's
interesting
cool.
stuff.
I like that.
Yeah, I totally
just followed
second
him.
Josh's work. Really, like he's been active for so long, and as you said, the content is very high quality. It's very good follow for sure.
And he only has 480 followers. We could have more followers for this guy.
The currency of the internet. Twitter followers.
It probably means, and someone tweeted this, that it probably means that it's higher quality content because he's got fewer followers.
Yeah,
Sorry, Sean.
I have to confess, I don't have a pick. Do you have one, Mike?
I think it's a small one, but I recently learned that we have a team set up on timezone.io. So we are currently looking at it right now. We're in 7 time zones at the moment. So knowing what time it is where, eventually I'll probably memorize it. But at least for now, it's pretty helpful to know that I probably shouldn't call certain people right now. So it comes in handy, and you see a little avatar as well, so you know who lives where. I find that pretty handy.
That's nice. I need that. I suck at time zones.
Yeah.
So I have a pick. It's a Swedish pastry called chocolate balls, and it's pretty much just oats, butter, some sugar, and some cocoa powder. I just mix up, and you can roll them in like shredded coconut or sugar. It's that's pretty much it. You just roll them into balls and you eat them. It's really good.
I mean, it sounds like porridge breakfast, healthy. I'm down.
You had me at pastry.
Yeah, pastries are my worst enemy. I eat too many pastries. It's too good. All right. On that note, thank you again for coming on the show, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.